What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a very special model airplane review. I'm your host, Ray. Today, I'll be reviewing the Gemini200 Spirit Airlines Airbus A320 in the 2007 Skittles livery, item number G2NKS1338, released for May of 2025. In this video, I'll do an in-depth review of the model, after which I will list off its pros and cons. At the end, I will decide whether or not I recommend this model to other collectors. After all of this, I will share why this model is so special to me. This is going to be a pretty long video, so sit back, relax, let's go! The box for this model is made from cardboard. The protective packaging on the inside is made from white foam. This box is a standard issue Gemini200 narrow body box, measuring 23 centimeters long, 7.5 centimeters wide, and 23 centimeters tall. I will show you around the box now. This is the front. Here's the bottom, right side, top, left side, and the back side. Included in the box is the model as shown here, fully assembled, painted, and ready to display. Also included is this pathetic excuse for a display stand. I mean, seriously, this display stand is really not good. It's too small to support the model. The part that attaches to the model is too large to fit into the model, and this model is particularly heavy, so the stand really doesn't have the structural integrity necessary to support the model without the risk of the model falling over. So if you want to display this model on a display stand, you will need to buy an aftermarket stand. Let's do a quick 360 before I begin my review. The fuselage length for this model is 18.5 centimeters. The wingspan is 17.3 centimeters. The height is 6.5 centimeters. These dimensions are mostly accurate to 1:200 scale. As mentioned earlier, this model is very heavy because it is made primarily out of die-cast metal. You can also see it's a little bit tail heavy, but not by much. It is also worth noting that this model is noticeably heavier than other 1:200 scale die-cast model airliners of similar size. Let's begin the review with the fuselage. The shape of the fuselage overall is decent. The nose shape is somewhat accurate to that of the A320. It could use a bit of improvement, but it's not terrible. What makes it look a bit worse is the cockpit window printing and also the nose cone here. You can see it's a little bit curved, which I understand the nose cone shape isn't a perfect circle, but I don't think it should have this offset curve that we see right here. Now I'm going to move down the rest of the fuselage. Take note of the various details. We can see the Spirit title there. That looks pretty good. What I do want to point out here is it's hard to see due to the reflection, but right here on the first eye, we can see some white paint poking out from underneath the blue here. So the Spirit title application here on the left side didn't go perfectly, but it's still a minor infraction. There's the overwing exits. As we move down towards the rear of the aircraft, look at the windows here. You can see that there's some white paint poking out from underneath the gray paint here due to misalignment from the gray part of the window and then the silver for the frame. The printing on the fuselage didn't go very well. By the time we reach the last window though, all of the windows do align, so it's not that big of an infraction. Here with the rear exit, we see the different shades of color used to denote the outline of the door. All of those seem aligned, which looks very good. Here's the vertical stabilizer. Overall, this is pretty solid. It's a simple part. There's not much going on here, but the detail that's present is accurate. I'd also like to point out that the colors used for the big S title here are completely accurate to the real aircraft, as is the blue and the red that we saw on the fuselage. So overall, the paint colors on this model are very good, and the paint application up here seems pretty nice. We have the silver on the leading edge. That looks good as well. The attachment with the aircraft also seems pretty nice. The only thing I can think to complain about is up here, the top surface is a little bit angled. This could be due to how the vertical stabilizer is mounted on the fuselage, but it shouldn't be at an angle compared to the fuselage. This top edge should be parallel to the fuselage. Here on the right side of the aircraft, you can definitely see a bit more of what I was referring to with the angle of the top edge of the vertical stabilizer. But here on the right side of the aircraft, it's pretty similar to the left side. Everything I've said about the left side is also applicable to the right side. So I'm going to move down the fuselage now, take note of the details and also the different stencils and minor printed details here on the right. The wings on this model are decent. They feature a lot of recessed panel lines for the different control surfaces, both on the leading edge and trailing edge of the wing. All of these look pretty good. Here on the left wing, I don't see any of them that are filled in with paint. Maybe a little bit on the air brakes here, but not much. They're still clearly defined. There's also some printed detail with the overwing exit markings and some of the stencils. That looks pretty good. And the different paint colors on here looks pretty good. However, I did notice that there is not necessarily a missing paint color up here, but it's something that they've done on previous releases, but Gemini choose to omit on this release. Usually up here on the center of the wing, within this, or somewhat within this enclosed space by the stenciling here, there's usually like a silver paint, or at least a different shade of gray when compared to the trailing edge and just the rest of the wing in general. This isn't present on this model, and I don't believe that's accurate. It's not a huge difference, but it's something I did want to point out. I also noticed that underneath the overwing exit titles here, we can see some of the black printed details, so the printing on this was really thin. The leading edge of the wing has its silver paint. That looks pretty good. No complaints there. And on the bottom of the wing, there is no printed detail, and honestly I'd argue that there should be. I've seen pictures of the underside of A320 wings, and there are a few stencils here and there that are worth printing, but on this model there aren't any. It's not that huge of a deal though. And down here there's also a few recessed panel lines for the control surfaces, all of which are clearly defined. The attachment of the wings to the aircraft is pretty solid. The seam line is smooth. I don't see anything really worthy of complaining about. Now, what I did want to point out on the right wing, though, is that the printed detail is chipped. We do see that some of the printed detail here is chipped. We can see some of the black paint poking out from underneath the overwing exit marking here. The Sharklets on this model are decent. The shape is good, but everything else about them could use some improvement. Well, actually, the paint application on the outside here is decent. The Spirit title looks good. The silver paint seems okay, so I don't really see anything worthy of complaining about. But what I mean with improvement is the angle relative to the aircraft. These are pointing straight up, and they should be angled outwards a bit more. And on the inside of the Sharklets here, I think that the red paint, well, this one, on this side, it actually looks good. The red paint, the placement seems mostly accurate. I think it actually should be a little bit higher up. I don't know for sure, but point being, it gets the job done. However, on the right wing, that's where I have my issue because of the placement of the Spirit title. It almost hits the gray here, and you can see it's kind of off at an angle. This shouldn't be like that, so this one could definitely be maybe a bit lower or a bit higher up. Point being, they just need to straighten the line there. Aside from that, the Sharklets look pretty decent. The horizontal stabilizers on this model are pretty good. They feature enough detail. I don't really see anything worthy of complaining about for them. Here's the underside. They look pretty good. And the attachment with the fuselage is very solid, so no complaints about that. The APU doesn't really have anything interesting going on, which is rather unusual. I thought that this part usually had more detail, but I could be wrong. It still is painted a nice silver color. And on the underside of the fuselage, we see the transition between the white, red, and blue. And down here, it looks pretty good. I do see some layering of the paint, though, but it doesn't look terrible. I did see the overlap here between the red and blue, and it's not really that bad, but it is a little bit annoying to see that kind of thing. The engines on this model are decent. They're not perfect, but they're not terrible. The shape of the nacelle is accurate. The paint application and the red band, the colors and placement of that looks pretty good. And on the engine itself, the inlet looks nice, painted a light silver, and the exhaust with its two tones of silver also looks pretty good. The fans are nicely detailed. There's even a spinner spiral in there, which looks nice, but these fans do not spin. Here's the right engine for completion's sake. And on the inside of the engine, there's also an engine strake, which is painted blue. I believe that's accurate. I don't think it needs to be painted white. And on the underside of the engine nacelle, we have plenty of printed details and some painted detail as well, all of which looks very nice in my opinion. And there's a better view of that engine strake if you wanted to see that. Now, the exhaust nozzles, they definitely could use some work because there's a lot of blue paint poking out from underneath the silver paint on the outside. On the inside, I understand that it may not be accessible, specifically right here, but a lot of that blue paint definitely could have been patched up by the silver out here. The engine pylons are a different story, however. On the left pylon, I don't know what happened. They clearly tried to touch up some weird mistake by hand because I can see brush marks and evidence that this silver paint was brushed on. This is very unusual. I don't usually see this from Gemini, but I do understand that they do sometimes touch up mistakes by hand. And we can see that this isn't really the case on the right side, but some paint chipping is visible on the silver paint right there. So paint application definitely could have gone a bit better. And I also see that part of the nacelle, not the nacelle, but the inlet here, the silver inlet, was kind of chipped away on the right engine here. So yeah, like I said, engine quality wasn't great. This model features three-dimensional antennas and details on the fuselage, these details being antennas, lights, and a singular SATCOM dome. So on the top of the fuselage, we have this large antenna at the front. This looks pretty good. It's firmly attached, no complaints. Towards the middle of the aircraft, we have a gemmed light painted red. This looks good. And then we have a yellow SATCOM antenna. This isn't exactly perfect. The shape isn't exactly what it should be, but it gets the job done. And the fit with the aircraft is pretty good. There's a minimal gap between the fuselage and the SATCOM antenna right here. And just behind it, we have another large antenna. This looks pretty good. The placement seems accurate. And then back here, we have a smaller but a bit wider antenna. This also looks pretty good. On the bottom of the aircraft, we have even more antennas. We have one of these curved antennas towards the front of the aircraft. And then right behind it, we have a gemmed light. And then there's the Gemini Jets title right there. Behind it is the display stand hole, and then another one of these interesting curved antennas, then a large antenna. All of these look pretty good. None of them have any attachment issues, and the placement seems accurate. And then back here we have one of these curved antennas. I do see some glue around it, but it's not that big of a deal. Now we are at the bottom of the aircraft. Take note of the various printed details along the fuselage. There's a lot of small stencils and printed details down here. Right here, especially near the, not payload doors, but the cargo doors. That's what I was looking for. It all looks really good, and Gemini Jets did a very nice job with some of the stenciling on the fuselage here. The landing gear on this model is permanently extended, and the gear is pretty good. It's nicely detailed. The wheels are made out of rubber, and they do roll, and on the right main gear, actually, we can see the paint cracked because the strut, I guess, separated from the gear door. This is a rather common issue, unfortunately, and it doesn't affect the structural integrity of the landing gear, but it is rather disheartening to see. However, compared to some of the other landing gears that I saw from these models, frankly, that's not that big of a deal. When I went to go inspect a few of these models when I bought this one at my local retailer, a lot of them had damaged landing gear, especially in the main gear. Some of them had bent gear struts. Some of the gear struts were straight up snapped, and I'll talk more about that in detail when we go over the pros and cons. And then the nose gear on this model, in terms of detail, it's good. It is designed to swivel and pivot, and unfortunately when sitting on the ground, it does kind of angle forward. We'll see that shortly, but overall, the detail is pretty good, and on the gear door, we can see the ship number 3633 right there. So the gear, when it's not damaged, is actually pretty good. Oh, and also, like the main gear, the nose wheels are made out of rubber and they are designed to roll. So here's what I was talking about. Here we can see how the model sits on its landing gear. Oh, well, here, let me adjust the phone. There we go. So you can see that the nose gear, it's kind of pointed straight up, maybe a little bit angled backwards. This shouldn't be like that. It should be angled a little bit forwards. But the reason for that is because the nose gear on this model was horribly mangled. It was totally bent, and I had to bend it back into place. And while it does the trick, it really wasn't a perfect repair. The main gear looks decent as well. It is angled slightly backwards, which is accurate to the A320 family. Here's my signature steering contest. The wing flex looks good. The angle at which the wings are situated, if that makes sense, like the curve as we go from the fuselage to the wingtip, that's not accurate. A320 wings don't do that. Engine clearance looks good, gear balance seems okay. The vertical stabilizer is definitely angled off to the right side of the aircraft, left side of your screen. Yeah, cockpit window printing might be a little bit slanted, could also be part of the gear balance. And the nose gear, yeah, you can tell it was previously damaged because the strut is off at an angle. It still supports the model, but it's not really correct, per se. That's the end of my review. Time for pros and cons. What did Gemini jets do well on this model? They did a good job with fine detailing. The printed details look good, particularly on the fuselage and engines. The 3D antennas on the fuselage are also a nice touch. The paint colors on this model are completely accurate to the real aircraft as well. Paint application was mostly consistent from the looks of it. On the other hand, what did Gemini mess up? Well, to be perfectly blunt, a lot. The paint application needs improvement. We saw some imperfections, such as texturing and brush marks, particularly on the silver paint on the engine pylons. Fine detail application also had its issues. Several of the printed details are misaligned, and a few are scratched. The shape of the model isn't good either. The nose shape, wing angle, and sharklets all could use improvement. However, by far the biggest issue with this model isn't the model itself, it's the packaging. When I purchased this model at my local retailer, Grayland Station, I had the opportunity to inspect the models straight out of their shipping boxes. Grayland Station received 12 of these models, all of which were horribly damaged.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more?
They all had bent nose gear struts. Some of them had broken main gear struts, the majority of which were irreparably damaged. Worse yet, 3 of them had broken main gear wheels. This was truly sad to see because I was very excited for this model. It's also a testament to the poor packaging and quality control from Gemini jets. Say what you will about Gemini's improving performance in the past few years, but they still have a long way to go. I think we all know where this is going, so let's get it over with. Despite its accurate paint colors and extensive detail, I do not recommend this model to my fellow collectors. What we saw with the broken parts is completely unacceptable. If you still want to buy this model, I highly recommend that you find a store that allows you to inspect the model. As mentioned earlier, I bought mine at Grayland Station in Chicago, an excellent store where the owner allows you to thoroughly check your model for defects. If this isn't an option and you're buying from an online store, I wish you the best of luck. It's a huge risk, but there's a chance that you get a decent model. That's all I have to say about the model. Now, I will share why this model is so special to me. Back in the early 2010s, I flew to Texas with my family for vacation. We flew on a Spirit Airlines Airbus A319 in the old gray pixel livery. However, while I was at the airport, I saw several Spirit A319s and A320s in the colorful Skittles livery. I was instantly fascinated by them since the livery had my favorite color combination: red, white, and blue. I had never seen such a colorful and unique paint scheme on an airplane before. The Skittles paint scheme quickly became my favorite airline livery, and I went crazy every time I saw it. Before I knew it, the first model airliner in my collection was a 1:400 scale Spirit Airlines Airbus A319. The second was a 1:200 scale version. In the years that followed, my collection slowly grew, but my all-time favorite model was still the Spirit A319. A few years later in 2014, Spirit unveiled their new livery. Instead of red, white, and blue, now their airplanes would wear bright yellow with black titles, similar to that of a taxicab. I was deeply upset by this. My favorite livery was replaced. Despite this, I still got a 1:200 scale Airbus A319 in the new yellow livery. However, as I saw my favorite livery slowly disappear, so did my interest in commercial aviation. Within a few years, I stopped collecting commercial airliners in favor of warbirds and armored fighting vehicles. I was convinced that my favorite airline livery was no longer flying, so I wasn't interested in airliners anymore. Worse yet, I never got the opportunity to fly on a Skittles plane. By 2019, my interest had completely shifted to mass notification. Commercial airliners were more of an afterthought by then. But on Wednesday, July 3rd, 2019, everything changed. My family and I were at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, waiting for our flight to Florida. We were going to fly on Spirit Airlines again. As we approached our gate, I saw the impossible. Waiting for us was a Spirit Airlines Airbus A320 in the old Skittles livery. Tail number November 640 November Kilo. It was a dream come true. Finally, I would fly on a Skittles plane. The flight to Florida was easily the best flight I've ever been on. When I left the plane, I felt different. Something changed. Once more, I looked to the skies with the same excitement I did when I was younger. Less than a year later, in June of 2020, I restarted my scale model commercial airliner collection. Since then, my collection has grown to over 200 commercial airliners in various scales. I also learned that even today, several Spirit A320s remain in the Skittles livery. Since July of 2019, I've wanted a 1:200 scale Spirit Skittles A320, and at long last, it's finally here. It's not the same tail number as the one that I flew on, but it's still a Skittles A320. The first and only one in 1:200 scale as of right now. And despite its issues, I love this model, and it will always have a special place in my collection. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching. As always, if you have questions or feedback, be sure to leave a comment below. If you're new to the channel and you want to show some support, like this video and subscribe so you never miss another upload. While you're here, feel free to watch my other videos about the scale models I collect. Happy building, happy collecting, please take good care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.